It's a somber day in Philadelphia, and joining me now to discuss said somber day is my pop, Pattison. Pop, how are you?
Good, Patrick. How are you? I'm not somber at all. I'm in a good mood today.
Of course you are. I'd be better, Bob. I'd be better if they put up any fight. Any fight at all.
Yeah, there wasn't much of it. There wasn't much of it at all. Did they win the jump ball? I think there was a fight
They
for the
did.
jump ball,
They
and then
did win the
after
jump.
that, it was pretty much downhill.
They led it. They led in this game at one point, 2-0.
Yes,
And that's when they should
they
have
did.
stopped. They should have stopped the count.
They should have thrown the streamers down and left the court.
I had a fear before the series, Bob, that I had two main concerns going into the Knicks series. The first one being that Boston was their NBA Finals, beating Boston, coming back from that 3-1 deficit and getting over the hump and getting the monkey off their back. And my second fear was that because that series was so grueling, go 7 games, because game 7 was on the road and you start, a day later, essentially, that they would be gassed. And it appeared to me like both kind of reared their ugly head to create this perfect storm of suck for the city of Philadelphia. What was your takeaway on why exactly they ended up getting crushed?
Yeah, those two things are legit. I mean, game 1 against New York, forget about it. I mean, it was just a I know I was in Boston, came home, went back to New York. I was exhausted. All I did was ride a train. It wasn't fair. I don't want to say it wasn't fair, but it wasn't fair to the bodies to be able to have to go 7 games and then start a game 1 2 days later, less than 48 hours later. That you're correct on that one. But the other one is, and I think the glaring thing is, New York's just a better basketball team, and they might be playing the best basketball in the East right now. I mean, I was sitting next to Jimmy Lynam yesterday at the game, and talking hoops with him for 3 quarters was just phenomenal. And the things that the Knicks did and are doing are just really, really good, Pat. And the Sixers can't keep up with that. And they lose OG Anunoby, and they bring off Deuce McBride off the bench, who hits 5 straight threes and gets them 23 points or whatever it was yesterday. Sixers don't have that. Sixers don't have anybody that can do that. Other good teams bring people off the bench that give you contributions. The Sixers more or less have guys that come off the bench to give the starters a rest. That's kind of what it is. You know what I mean? So there was a lot to this series that just didn't match up for the Sixers, and the Knicks were playing downhill and the Sixers were trying to climb uphill the whole series.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, I did a post-game video and said the Knicks player development, I'm not happy about it, but
Pat, where'd you get that microphone? I love that.
Are you done?
I do. I like that. That's really cool. Go ahead.
Anyway,
sorry.
thank you. The third player development is really good, and the Sixers isn't. And I'm not talking about, Tyrese Maxey drafted 21st overall, but like they find a Deuce McBride, they find a Mitchell Robinson, they grab Landry Shamet, a Sixers reject, off the scrap heap, and plug him in, and now he's giving them minutes. And I'm not even mad that they lost game 7, because how do you account for a team shooting damn near 70? It seemed like 70, 80%.
It was only game 4, Pat. It wasn't
game
even
4.
game 7. It was only
I'm
game
sorry.
4. They
Game
didn't
4.
win this game in the series.
No, you're right. I don't
Yeah.
know ball, so everybody hit thumbs down for that. But in game 4, yeah, you hit 70%, it seemed like, from 3. I can't get mad at that, but it just the Sixers don't. You're right, and that's the perfect way to put it. They don't seem to have a bench that actually contributes. It's more of, all right, we'll give you a break. And now the one guy that they did have that a lot of fans are going to point to as he could have been the savior of the series was Jared McCain. And obviously that is a botched trade that I don't think if you gave truth serum to Daryl Morey, he would say that he would redo. But I looked at that trade as the Sixers probably had a deal on the table. They trade McCain for the pick. The deal falls through. You have the other sector of the Sixers fan base that says, no. The ownership said get under the luxury tax. They don't want to pay that. So you got to trade somebody, and they trade Jared McCain. Where do you stand on the Jared McCain trade now that we are, able, 2 months removed from it?
Yeah, my first thought was when they did it the day before the trade deadline was, okay, obviously there's another shoe to fall. Something else is going to happen. They must have something in place. I do think they got, if we want to say fleeced, fooled, whatever, I think they thought they had something else on the table and it didn't fall through. And then there you are, you're stuck. The luxury tax thing, they've come out and said, no, that wasn't part of the reasoning. But I think you and I were working together during the pandemic, where it was like a day after, and they started cutting people. The day after things started shutting down, Josh Harrison Company started telling people that they had to take salary cuts if they made $60,000 a year or less. Like the money thing has always been baffling. So it's somewhere in between, I'm sure. If I had to put money on it, I would say that they thought they were trading McCain, and they had another deal in place, and then that deal didn't come through, and they got caught with their pants down.
Now, one of the reasons I think they traded Jerry McCain was because he wasn't getting a ton of minutes because Quentin Grimes had kind of taken that spot. Quentin Grimes, though, is a unrestricted free agent, as is Andre Drummond, as is Kelly Oubre Jr.
Right.
You're looking at three guys there right there that Oubre was a starter, but the other two were, two of your three subs that you had.
Right.
I look at the Sixers starting four because I look at Oubre, being interchangeable with somebody, but their starting four I think is really good, with Embiid and George and Maxey and Edgecombe, but their bench again needs to be built out. Do you see any of these guys coming back?
I think they'll take a good hard look at Oubre, Pat. Here's the case, and I think I wrote this yesterday. Excuse me. Was that, are you getting rid of guys and just replacing, or are you upgrading? Are you going to upgrade a Kelly Oubre? What do you need out of somebody at that fifth spot? As you said, he's the fifth starter. Well, you need somebody that can score a little bit for you when you need them to, and you need them to be able to play defense, preferably against wing players. Well, that's exactly what Kelly Oubre is. So are you going to go and get somebody and upgrade on him? Probably not. Do you decide to bring him back? Maybe they will. I know Oubre does like it here. I wouldn't mind seeing him back, unless you can get a younger player that, like I said, maybe has more potential than him. But Grimes and Drummond, that's your first and second guy off the bench pretty much. Drummond, I know, is not going to come back here. I don't think he really cared for the coaching style that was going on with Nick Nurse while he was here, and he was ticked off yesterday. He was ticked off a lot during the series, getting taken out of the lineup when he was, and not just for Joel Embiid. So yeah, they have major holes to fill, Pat. And what do they have to assets to do it? You're paying an awful lot of money to three players, as we all know, and so you're kind of hoping that you get something that hits, but maybe isn't a proven commodity yet. And that's a scary situation to be in.
I thought Kelly Oubre actually had a really, really strong postseason. I thought he, as you said, stat wise, might not have jumped out of the stat sheet, but he did a lot of little things that I was really, really impressed with.
Yeah, I mean, he was guarding Jaylen Brown. Sorry, he was guarding Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and then you get into this series, and at times he was covering Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, and then other times Mikal Bridges. So he'll guard, and they asked him to guard one of the best two scorers on the other team, and he did a pretty good job of it. And that's what I'm saying. Like, can you upgrade on that? Like, sure, you can, you could, but in the situation the Sixers are in, can they? And I don't know if they can.
Yeah, disappointed to hear your take on Drummond, because I really enjoyed having a backup big that could actually contribute. I feel like they haven't had that a ton in the Joel Embiid era, and I haven't seen enough from Bono where I go like, okay, he can kind of take over and give good minutes if Embiid can't go on a back-to-back, or you just need to sub him out.
Yeah, so Andre Drummond has an NBA skill, as we all know. He can rebound as well as anyone in the league. That's an NBA skill. Dembona is here's all you need to know about a Dembona, I think. This is it in a nutshell. Game 3, he sets a high pick for Paul George.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
Right. But there's two things on this. So he rolls. George goes to throw him the ball. He doesn't even look for the ball. Ball gets intercepted. George just stands there. stands there, doesn't move, doesn't run to get back on defense, stands there like, what the hell are you doing? And Bona then runs down and fouls the guy who's making a layup, which he does all the time anyway. One, that's a bad move by Paul George. You can't let your frustration show like that. But two, it just shows how frustrated this team is with the lack of
basketball IQ.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I will put it nicely. Lack of basketball IQ that Adem Bona has. And it's just, it's maddening. The athleticism, yeah, we see it. And we see the block shots and all that. But when people see 2 block shots, they also don't see the 3 missed block shots that he's leaving his man for, and then the 3 offensive rebound dunks that his man is getting because he's going off trying to, block somebody else's shot. Or for some reason, when, say, a Mitchell Robinson gets the ball 25 feet from the basket, he goes up and gets in his defensive stance like he's in high school and he's, playing on Mitchell. Like, why? Why are you doing that 27 feet away from the basket? Adem Bona to me is a project. And I hope they develop him a little bit. I don't understand how they're developing him. And I'll tell you this. I was telling my friend Rock this the other day. You remember Rock, right, Pat?
Love Rock.
Send him a video. When Adem Bona comes out of the locker room for pregame warm-ups, this is like an hour and a half before the game. First thing they do is they give him 2 basketballs, and they have him do dribbling drills between his legs and behind his back and all that stuff, and then they'll throw him another ball, and he has to get – and they work on dribbling drills from side to side for about 10 minutes. Why? Confusing to me. Don't know. Yeah. I haven't seen him dribble all that much in a basketball game, and maybe they can say, well, that's why we're working on it, so he can dribble. I don't want Adem Bona dribble in the basketball. Then he'll go to the 3-point line, corner 3-point line, and he'll shoot threes for about 5 or 10 minutes.
Why?
Those are the first 2 drills he does when he comes out. Now, I understand it's a stretch, big man, stretch, this. He's not that. And you can say, oh, we're trying to develop him to be that. No, teach him how to catch the ball. Yeah. Teach him how to catch the ball and just go straight up and dunk the ball. Teach him how to, when a bounce pass is thrown to him, be able to catch the ball when it's below his waist. Throw him 1,000 balls a day, every day, including these pregame warm-ups. And for now, please forget about the 3-point shot and the dribbling drills. Like, I just don't get it.
It took Andre Drummond, 13, 14 years in the NBA to hit a corner 3?
Yeah.
And exactly. He became a pretty decent – I mean, the past season was good, but, to your point, yeah, man, I don't need that from Adem Bona. No. Look, overall, I look at this past season of Sixers basketball as a success. And I know that Sixers fans don't want to hear that right now because the body is not even cold yet. But when I look at the fight that they had to get back in the Boston series, finally getting over the monkey or the monkey off their back and getting over the hill. To your point, I didn't think that they were better than New York. I had Anthony Gilbert on from Slam Magazine. We both picked Knicks in 6. How do you view this past season of Sixers basketball?
Well, it's funny. If you were to say they're going to be without their best player for 60% of the games, that one of their top 3 players is going to be suspended for 25 games. Their second best player is going to suffer an injury to a shooting hand that's going to bother him for the second half of the season an awful lot. And then say, but they're going to win 45 games and win a first round playoff series. I think people would be like, wow, is that coach up for coach of the year? I mean, honestly, you might want to think that. But success, it's great that they won that Boston series. That was cool. And being up there for the games that I was game 2, I think I wrote this, shocked the hell out of me. I sat there at the Boston Garden almost with my mouth agape. I can't believe this is happening after they got blown out in game 1.
Well, and then, real quick, I was hanging out with our old buddy Devon the day after game 1. And we both joked yeah, well, basketball season's about to end in Philly in a couple days. So to your point, yeah, I never expected them to actually come out in game 2 and have a game plan.
Yeah, and then you go to game 3, and the Sixers played really well, and Boston played well, and they lost by 8 points, the Sixers did, and you thought, well, that's the best shot they can give, and there it is. And then they go and win 3 out of the next 4. So that was great. That was surprising. That was all, well and good. But where's this organization as a whole? That's what I look at. And I've said this to you before. I'm not going to say it's a losing organization, but they're certainly not a winning one. And, that goes from the top on down. What kind of moves are they making? You talk about the luxury tax, Pat, and all that stuff. Didn't anybody have the wherewithal to see, like, well, Jared McCain's getting healthier. You do have Quentin Grimes, who's up next year. Jared McCain's going to be cheap for the next few years. Why don't we let them battle it out for the rest of the year and see who winds up being better, and then make a decision off of that? And they didn't, and they wound up making a bad trade. I don't think they know how to win all that well as an organization, and to have an anomaly like beating the Celtics in the first round, as good as it is I'll use Doug Collins' favorite phrase: is it fool's gold? It might have been. It might have been.
Yeah, I think Daryl Morey, to your point, has done some good things. I think he's really good at drafting, and I think when you look at McCain, Maxey, Edgecombe, obviously hits on that. A couple other guys, I think he's been good at drafting. I think signing guys, he's been probably shooting at an Adembona 3-point range when it comes to free agent signings, which worries me. I mean, I think we all remember the PJ Tucker, Daniel House, off season, and I'm worried that they're going to go down that road again. And to your point about winning basketball, I get concerned that Daryl Morey is so bloodthirsty for a championship, and I'm using his tenure in Houston as an example, where he would pretty much traded their entire future for guys that were washed. I'm looking at 2028 when they have the Clippers pick that probably will be pretty enticing. Do you think they end up dangling that out there to try to get an actual starting small forward and get a name out there? Because the rumor was that they were in on some pretty high ticketed guys at the deadline.
Yeah, well, that's always going to be around Daryl Morey, right? That he was trying to swing for the stars and try to get them. It's interesting because you almost answered your own question. The best that he's done has been draft picks. What he hasn't done well is swung for the stars and gotten them. So does he just keep relying on draft picks where he has been good, or do you use those picks to swing for the stars? I just don't know. You and I've talked about this many times. Give me good players and I'll make it work. I'm not one of these, the fit and this and that, and we have one of these and we don't have. I don't care. If I'm on a schoolyard and you say those are the 5 best players that are here, give them to me and I'll figure it out. I just don't think the Sixers, and we can go back to Brett Brown and all that. I don't think they've ever been able to figure things out when they do have good players. I was watching highlights the other night, Pat, of like Embiid and Simmons and JJ Redick and like you had some really good players in this organization for a lot of years. And I think when you and I used to work at another place together, I wrote a list of prominent players that they had brought in to surround Joel Embiid. And I think the list was up to like 17, 19, something like that. But they just can't ever get it to work. And I don't know. I don't know what the answers are. We can say, they need another. You have 4 really good starters, as you mentioned. Most teams would like that. It's the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys that they just can't figure out right now.
Yeah, and that obviously, I mean, for me is a concern because you're right. Like I think back to the Jimmy Butler season and the Kawhi shot as just a complete missed opportunity. I mean, Kawhi hits that incredible shot, but like you swung for it, and then all of a sudden that offseason you let Jimmy go, you trade for Josh Richardson, you bring in Al Horford, it'll all make sense soon and all of that. You brought up the idea of making it work. I've seen on social media, and look, this is a reactionary city. Nobody knows that better than you. But I've seen the blow it up, fire Daryl Morey, fire Nick Nurse, trade Embiid. I think we both know that they're not going to fire Daryl Morey. He signed an extension, and Embiid is even if you wanted to trade him, you're getting pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
Nick Nurse, though, I don't know what Sixers fans wanted from him. I mean, you look at his entire Sixers tenure here. I think he's done a pretty good job dealing with a rash of injuries to his best player. But would you move on?
I don't think right now the Sixers would. I wonder if Nick Nurse wants to. This is a tough place to be. And I think if Nick Nurse put himself out on the open market, there would be teams interested, right? Every day he's coming into an office, which we saw with Brett Brown, which you saw with Doc Rivers, and red, green, and yellow. Red, Joel can't play. Green he can, yellow we'll let you know after warm-ups tonight. It's a maddening position to be in. Nick Nurse, to me, and I was only around them for about half of this season, Pat, but this is what I came across was I think Nick Nurse is a really good coach when he can sit and know what he has and know what the other team is, like in a playoff series against Boston. He made some really good adjustments against Boston because, okay, I know my roster. I know who they're playing. Boom, I can concentrate on this. Where I don't think he was particularly great this year, and a lot of it had to do with not knowing who he had, was game to game, day to day, plan to plan, because of the unknown, because who's in my lineup, who's not in my lineup. Paul George is suspended. I have to try to start Dominic Barlow. You know what I mean? Like, I think once Nick Nurse was able to sit down, get settled, and see what he had and know what he had, that he made some good adjustments and showed that, especially in the Boston series. I don't think he had a healthy Joel Embiid at all in this New York series. I think Tyrese Maxey, who jammed his pinky again. Now, there's people say, excuse me, people say,
don't die on me, Bobby. Don't die on me.
I'm all right. They'll say, just buddy tape it and get going. There's tendon damage in there. So it's not just the pinky. It hurts the whole hand. It's his right hand. We saw a couple passes in that Knicks series where, like, not even big passes, just throwing it across, to try to get the ball to Edgecombe, and it would be like 4 feet out of bounds. I think that was really bothering him. And I'm not making excuses for injuries, but I think this was a really frustrating year for Nick Nurse here in Philadelphia. And this is going out on a limb a little bit. I could be totally wrong, but Daryl Morey's going to speak to us, after he goes to the combine in about a week or whatever. If Nick Nurse isn't there, it'll make me wonder if there's something going on a little bit more. If he is there, well, then it's, status quo. He's the coach for the Sixers next year. But I just wonder, and I have no background. I have no, I didn't dive into this or anything. But I, in my mind, I just wonder if he wants to be here next year.
Okay. I hope he is. I do think he's a good coach, but I could absolutely see the frustration. Because when you have Joel Embiid and you don't know when he's healthy, and then all of a sudden it's an appendectomy, it just seems like it's been one thing after another. Like, nobody can catch a break. It's Paul George getting suspended, the appendectomy. I do want to talk about Joel Embiid because I got into it with my barber of all people, because I think Joel Embiid.
You got a haircut?
I did. Yeah. No, it's. I mean,
look at you. Now, the lettuce is tame.
Shout out to Ricky, but he was ripping Bryce Harper. He was ripping Bryce Harper, and I said, I bet you're one of those guys that doesn't like Joel Embiid. He's like, yeah, I can't stand Joel Embiid. And I'm a huge Joel Embiid fan, as you know. And I look at Joel Embiid as a guy that could have taken the easy way out and said, look, I had an appendectomy 17 days ago. We're down 3-1 in the series. I'll see you next year. He comes back. They win the series. He looks really good in the series, but then, he looks horrible in the Knicks series because it just looked like he was winded. And I fear that a lot of Sixers fans are going to blame Joel Embiid for the Knicks series and go, oh, well, the offense ran through him and they couldn't. Like, I've already seen comments through it. What's your take on Joel Embiid coming back? Because I think he deserves a lot of credit for it, but I know that other people are just flat out done with it.
Well, I was shocked too, and I said it. People kept asking me, "Oh, when's he coming back?" My wife came back 10 days after she had an appendectomy and stuff. And I said, "I swear to God, you would be hysterical if you saw the tweets and the emails and stuff that I got." And I said, "Look, I don't think he's coming back because you have 3 or 4 cases in the NBA of people having appendectomies during the season, and the average time coming back was 4 or 5 to 6 weeks." That would have taken the Sixers, still going. He would still be out now. So I didn't think he was coming back based on that knowledge. And he's 7'2", and he weighs 280 plus pounds. And that's a surgery. They called it an emergency surgery. So did his appendix burst? Whatever. Something, had to be done there. So I was surprised he came back. I'll always say, give me my best player, and we'll run with that. So, yeah, if he said he could come back, if I'm a coach, if I'm his teammate, great, love you. Come on back and let's go. So I commend him for doing that. Absolutely. Now, during the series, he twisted an ankle, he hurt his hip, and, And I'm telling you, Pat, we were in New York the day they scratched him for day 2. Well, that morning they had a shoot around and we were there, and he comes walking in and he looked like he was walking on nails. I mean, the guy could barely move. And sure enough, about an hour or so later, he gets scratched from that game, but works himself back into being able to play games 3 and 4. And it is admirable. And for people that say, they're better off without him, really? I don't know. He's a pretty damn good player. When he came back from the appendectomy, I turned to somebody and said, "Man, you talk about a guy that can roll out of bed and score 30 points in an NBA game, Michael Jordan, whatever. This guy rolled off an operating table and scored like 30 points and grabbed 12 rebounds a game. He is unbelievably talented. Whether they all can figure out how to win with him, that's the next question. Because you know what, Pat, at this point in his career, I don't know if he's the number one guy. I think he's going to have to be the guy that you're building with and not around, as well as Maxey and Edgecombe. I lost you. I can't hear you. No.
You got me now?
There you are.
All right. I'm just done with the mic. I tried, Bobby. I tried.
like that mic, though.
I tried. No, it's great, and it usually works, but it crapped out on me, and it just kept going in and out, and then the camera kept going in and out. So we're done. But yeah, I think that it's a shame, and I said it after your game, last night's game. It kind of ruined a great Joel Embiid performance. Like, he looked really good yesterday. Perfect from the field, and you don't really notice it because they're getting hammered by 30. But all right, last question before I let you go, because you got a lunch to get to. But VJ Edgecombe, what are you looking at?
The time. I haven't even had breakfast yet, Pat. I can't have lunch already.
You got a lunch coming up, I'm sure of it. Not with me though. But anyway,
we're trying to work that out. Our schedules are all very busy.
I mean, season's over, Bobby. Now that it is in the books, your thoughts on the rookie year of VJ Edgecombe? And I asked this of everybody that I interview with him, but who does he remind you most of? What player? I probably asked you this before, actually, but who does he remind you of?
That's good. I mean, I've heard the comparisons of Dwayne Wade and players like that, athletic guards that are that can get up and down the floor. He's got to improve his shot. First of all, I'll answer your first question. What did I think of this year? I thought he was tremendous, and what an athlete. The thing that impressed me most, Pat, you couldn't tell if it was game 1 or game 90. I mean, that's how good a shape and that's how lively this kid was all year. That rookie wall, if it started to come at him, it didn't hit him. He really didn't get there. He did admit that he was tired at some points, but you really didn't see it. His defense is really good. I think his ball handling will improve. The way he goes to the basket is tremendous. He was a better shooter this year than anyone anticipated coming out of Baylor. And he's only going to get better at that. Him and Maxey in the backcourt together, that's pretty cool. That's really cool. Now, it's something you build with. You don't build around it. You have to build with it. And that's why I say, like Joel Embiid, I don't think he's, a number one star if they're going to move this thing forward. But I don't Jaylen Brown might be a decent, although I think he has a little bit of better handle than Jaylen Brown, but he's tough when he goes into the basket, something like that. He's going to be a really good player in this league for a long time.
All right, Bobby, what's the offseason look like for you?
Covering PGA this week out of the Ronimink. So I'm sure I'll see you there.
On Pattison?
On Pattison, that is correct. So we'll be at Ronimink this week covering that. You're going to be there, right?
You could pay me at this point, but in previous years, you could not pay me to go.
Pat never turned down a paycheck. I don't know how many times I have to tell you that.
I'll tell you a quick story. One of the worst events I ever worked as promotions, because when I first got out of being an intern, I got hired to do promotions, which I did not want to do at all. Hated it. But one of the worst gigs I ever had was 8 hours at the merch tent of the U.S. Open when it was at
2013 at Marion.
Yeah, at Marion. and it was one of by far the worst gigs I ever had. The only positive was I lived like 10 minutes away, so I could meet there. But I was sitting there looking at people buy $85 octopus pants, thinking these are not my folks. These are not my kind.
Octopus pants?
Yeah, one of the golfers, I forget who it was, he wore these like hideous looking.
John Daly.
No, it wasn't him. But he wore these hideous looking octopus pants at some point during the tournament, and the guy from the merch tent was like, "Yeah, like they're gonna be big, like it's gonna make news." And I remember thinking that's really dumb, and they were $95.
Wow.
So no, it's just it's not my people. I entered your little U.S. Open challenge every year. You would tell me, "Oh, I think you got a shot," and then you'd give it to some sales guy that made six figures.
What did you think of all the Knicks fans invading Philadelphia yesterday, being as you're a person that dabbles in having tickets and maybe selling them?
Yeah, I took a hit. I'll tell you right now. Joel Embiid is a liar. The only thing I'm mad about Joel Embiid, the only besmirching of his name I'll do is saying, put your money where your mouth is. Because I tweeted at him a few times, like, dude, you need to buy my tickets. Never DM me. So I took a hit. I don't have any problem with it. I mean, I understand, that Knicks fans are going to come down. It's cheaper to come to Philly. But the reality is, and I can tell you just from looking at the secondary market, if the Sixers had won one game, then it would not have been as bad. But you cannot blame Sixers fans, and myself included. Like I texted you, like I would have come down, but what's the point of spending money, coming down, buying parking, food, when one, even if they win, they're delaying the inevitable, and two, like you're going to be surrounded by Knicks fans because a sweep's coming.
Right.
So I never blame fans for selling their tickets. It's kind of on the team to give me a reason to go down there and not sell.
So,
and if they had won game two, I think there's a reason to not sell tickets. But I think that was the game. Game two to me was the game where you had a chance, and they probably would have won it if Joel Embiid could have went, but he couldn't.
So if you sell tickets and you make money off of the tickets, what is the definition of that, Pat? Is that capitalism?
Yeah.
So if you're a big fan of capitalism, and you've said that very, very often, can you complain about Sixers fans selling their tickets and Knicks fans invading?
No.
It's kind of hypocritical, isn't it?
Very hypocritical.
Okay, so I hope nobody's doing that.
No, I'd be shocked if anybody were to do that.
Right.
Even if it's for $1. But yeah, no, I have no problem with it. I mean, I'm not happy about it. I was down in the building 2 years ago when the Sixers lost the Knicks in 6 games, and it was a very obnoxious fan, because New York is an obnoxious fan base. And
it was funny yesterday, Pat. End of the third, early fourth, the Sixers fans cleared out. Like, and all during the game, everybody's, tweeting at you or whatever. We're talking, what do you think the percentages of Knicks fans here or whatever? And we had it at probably about 2/3 Knicks fans. And then when all the Sixers fans cleared out and all the Knicks fans stayed, that's about exactly what it was. It was about 67% Knicks fans.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, man. I mean, MSG, I did a whole TikTok yesterday about a story about my mom and getting into a fight at a Rangers playoff game a couple of years ago. And I mentioned how most cities, you're rabid, playoffs come around and you have a rabid fan base for the playoffs. Philly's no different. You saw it with the Flyers, like the rabid, scumbags will come out and go nuts. New York City's different. New York City, the rabid fan base gets priced out for Blaine and the hedge fund. And Blaine just got the company tickets, and he matched with Tiffany 27 minutes ago on Bumble. And even though they can't name 3 players, they're going to go to the game. That's the crowd you get in Madison Square Garden. You get and then it's like we got to see Tracy Morgan and Ben Stiller and all that. So that means that the rabid fan base now comes to Philly because it's cheaper. It's no different than Philadelphia going to look, if we played the Nationals in the playoffs, we'd pat ourselves on the back and say, oh my God, we travel well. Yeah. It's on the team to give me something. And
exactly.
And to me, I mean, they gave me, series 1, and I think they just ran out of gas. Like, that was my big take. I'm not mad at the team. I think they ran out of gas because you've got guys playing 40 minutes a game for 7 straight games. And, the Knicks were able to and I said this in my post game. The Sixers, to me, played the 2 teams in the NBA that might have the 2 deepest benches. You play Boston, you play New York. I mean, they were able to sub guys in easily, and the Sixers weren't able to do it. And unfortunately, you go down 3-0 in the series. I don't know what people expect. So I wish Joel Embiid had bought my tickets, Bobby, but he didn't.
Yeah, he said he would. I was sitting right there in front of him when he said, hit me up. I'll take care of it.
I did.
You hit him up. He didn't take care of it.
Yeah, and now I need to pray to God that people, watch this video and YouTube pays me.
Yes, I will pray. I will pray also, Pat.
I have no faith in that. All right, Bobby. What else is going on before I let you go? Anything?
My daughter graduates from college tomorrow.
I thought she already graduated.
No, Pat. She graduated.
I thought she graduated like a couple weeks ago. I saw the picture.
No, that was just those were just picked. No, tomorrow's the actual graduation. So big day in the Cooney house. Last child graduating from college, which is cool.
Was not invited. It's fine.
No.
Jenna's always hated me, so it's fine.
Yeah, that's true. No, everything's good. Check us out on Pattison. We got great things going on there, and it's just getting bigger and better. Our numbers are growing and growing and growing. So check out our coverage. We got a lot of really good people on staff there.
I have to give one of your coworkers credit. Timmy Kelly, who writes for On Pattison, asked Dave Dombrowski the question that was on my mind, which is, are you the guy for the job? Because I'm so done with Dave Dombrowski. Like, it's not even funny. And I thought Dave Dombrowski was a coward with his answer. But I credit Timmy for at least asking the question of, like, why the hell should we trust you, man? You signed Max Kepler and Adolis Garcia, and you put Jordan Romano, for a full season. And I think Matt Gelb had the tweet of, like, I forget who they released, but it was like this is like the 8th person the Phillies have released that has signed in the offseason during the Dave Dombrowski administration. Like, well, it should have been 9 because Jordan Romano was terrible. So credit to Timmy Kelly, to your point about the
he asked what everybody wanted to know. Maybe could have softened the question a little bit.
No.
In order to keep everybody happy, if you know what I mean.
No.
But yeah, he went right at it, and good for him.
No, Timmy looks like he looks like you at this point compared to the guy in Toronto. I don't know if you saw that clip. Are you aware of the whole story?
I don't know.
Okay, so the Maple Leafs hire a new president or a GM. It's either a GM or president of hockey ops, right? And the Maple Leafs, obviously, it's like the Eagles for here. The Maple Leafs are the big team in Toronto. They hired John Chakra, who was hired at the age of 26 to be the GM of the Phoenix Coyotes, and was an absolute disaster. He had the franchise forfeit draft picks for illegally tampering at the NHL Combine, which is like the dumbest thing you could do. There's no benefit of it. But he was holding meetings and stuff with the kids that he wasn't allowed to. His drafting was bad. Trades were bad. Everything was bad about this kid. He's suspended by the NHL. Not even by the Coyotes. The NHL had to reinstate him. And the Maple Leafs are like, that's our guy. That's our guy right there. So this reporter gets up, Steve Simmons, he gets up and he's like, I've talked to 20 people in the last couple of days. 19 out of the 20, one of them had anything nice to say about John Chakra. Meanwhile, he's sitting 20 feet away.
Wow.
And he's saying, it's the reporter saying this to the guy that hired him. He goes, why'd you hire him, basically? And the guy's like, well, I guess I talked to more people than you. And Steve Simmons goes, you realize the entire hockey world's laughing at you right now?
Wow.
It was probably the most vicious reporter question I think I've ever seen.
Wow.
And it was one of those where you listen to it and the entire fan base was like, yep, yeah, we're behind that guy. So, all right. I'm going to let you
be worse, Pat.
All right, go get breakfast. Get out of here.
Okay.
Goodbye, Bobby.
It's always good joining you. Thanks for having me, Pat.
Joining me now to discuss what he covers. He covers the Flyers. His name is Charlie O'Connor. He covers them from PHLY. He's a good guy. Hello, Charlie.
Hello, Pat. How are you?
Good, man. First of all, everybody go to the comment section of this video and wish Charlie a happy birthday. Just know it's belated. Y'all fucked up. It was rude of you not to wish him a happy birthday on his actual birthday. How was your birthday?
My birthday was, well, the birthday itself was not great because I worked on it and the Flyers lost in game 4 on my actual birthday. But the day before was nice. I went to a Korean barbecue. It was quite tasty.
Yeah, I love that, man. I went to McDonald's. Let's move on. I felt like the Sixers and Flyers had pretty much the same postseason. Like you had two teams facing their rivals in round 1. They end up winning. I don't know how many people expected them to win the series. I know me and you talked before the Penguin series. We didn't expect the Flyers to win. They did. We don't know puck. And then in round 2, both teams were completely humbled and found out, yeah, you're not that guy. What were your big takeaways on the difference between the Flyers and Carolina?
Yeah, well, I mean, we could talk about the differences in quality of roster. Obviously, the Carolina Hurricanes are a better team. Obviously, the Carolina Hurricanes are a more complete team. But really, what it comes down to in the end, more than anything, is that Carolina is a cup team. They're a team in their window. They are trying to win a Stanley Cup. Now, whether they win it or not, I don't know. I'm not sure if they have the horses to beat Colorado. But they are one of, I would say, 3 or 4 teams that has a legitimate chance of winning the Stanley Cup this year. The Flyers are not on that level. And they know that. They know that they are not at the point where they can actually compete for a championship. They can make the playoffs. They showed that this year. They could even win a round, but they are not at the stage of their development, at the stage of their timeline where they can realistically compete with the Carolina. And now, look, weird things happen in hockey all the time. Sometimes superior teams get upset by inferior teams. And the Flyers, they tried. Like this was a sweep, but I feel like this was a significantly less embarrassing sweep than the Sixers sweep. Like the Flyers played hard all the way through. There's a reason why the Flyers players got an ovation at the end of their series, and the Sixers players got cheered by a bunch of Knicks fans in the stands at the end of their sweep. Like the Flyers showed themselves better. But in the end, the Carolina Hurricanes are just a couple levels above where the Flyers are right now. And that's okay because the Flyers going into the season never tried to act like they were a cup contender,
Yeah, totally. And I feel like, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but anything that happened once you got into the playoffs, you're playing with house money because you have a 3.9% chance to make it. You made it. Great. Okay, let's get some experience for the younger guys.
Yeah, the only caveat I'll do there is I agreed with that up until they went 3-0, up 3-0 against Pittsburgh. Because then it's like, okay, well, now you got to win. Because if you blow a 3-0 lead, then that's all that anyone is going to remember about the season is that like you're the team that choked away a 3-0 lead. They could have lost to Pittsburgh and no one would have been mad. But if they would have lost in game 7 after going up 3-0, then people would have rightfully been livid because you blew it. Luckily for the Flyers, they found a way to get it done. I mean, they nearly choked it away. They go to overtime in game 6. And if they lose that game, then they're going back to Pittsburgh for a game 7. Who knows if they win that one? But they got the job done. And now everyone, despite the fact that their season ended in a sweep, can go into the offseason feeling pretty good about where the Flyers stand.
One of the big storylines this postseason, and it carried from the regular season, was the handling of Matvei Michkov. Rick Tocchet ends up sitting Matvei Michkov for Alex Bump in the Pittsburgh series. Immediately, Bump ends up scoring an absolutely horrible goal. That's a goal that I would score, but it was a horrible goal. But Tocchet's rewarded for it. And yet I still see Flyers fans pissed off. Have some Flyers fans lost the point of the plot?
Well, so here's the thing. Matvei Michkov, especially when he was drafted and then when he came to the team last season, he showed up and he was one of the only bright spots around the team. And what has resulted from that is that there are a lot of people who are just ride or die with Michkov, that they are of the opinion that if the Flyers mess this up, then they are a pathetic organization. And if Michkov isn't a superstar, then none of this is going to work. And a lot of them, I think, like the player more than they like the team. And that's
why I asked the question.
Yeah, and that's just the reality. And to a degree, I get it because the Flyers have been so mediocre to bad for so long that I get that some people are like, yeah, you know what? The Flyers need to earn back my trust, but Matvei Michkov doesn't because I've decided that he's my favorite player. That's fair. I get the love for Matvei Michkov. What I wish people would be willing to acknowledge, especially in these playoffs, is that he was really bad. Like, he was really bad. And admitting that he was really bad in these playoffs is not the same thing as saying that he's going to be a bad player, that he's a bust, that this isn't going to work. But in these playoffs, Matvei Mishkov was horrendous. I mean, I'm working on an article breaking down like kind of the stats of the playoffs, and obviously Mishkov is part of that. It's not going to be the only focus of the article, but he's going to be part of it. And I break down his performance statistically against the Penguins' fourth line in round one. And if you're getting crushed territorially by the other team's fourth line, like, there's not much more a coach can do. Like, that's it. That's as much sheltering as you can give a player, is give him offensive zone faceoffs against the other team's fourth line. And if he's still losing that matchup, it's kind of like, I don't know, what else can you really do? Like, you can't put him up against Crosby, because if he's getting crushed by Blake Lizotte and Noel Acciari, like, I don't know, he's probably going to get absolutely obliterated by Crosby and Malkin. So the Flyers were in a tough spot with Mishkov, because he is really important to the future. He is really talented, and I still believe in his long-term upside. But in these playoffs, he was overmatched. And that's why, to me, like, I get why people were up in arms about the scratch, but if you watched the games and you looked at the numbers, you knew why he was getting scratched, because he wasn't playing well in the postseason.
Yeah, I saw some stat today on Twitter, and it was some analytical stat that you understand, I don't. It was like Matvei Mishkov X VLORP, Y chromosome, Z squared, and he was like the worst one in the NHL. Yeah. And I feel like some Flyers fans cannot see the forest of the trees, where they're not able to go, okay, the team's actually doing better. That's the whole goal, because they're so hyper focused on, but Mishkov. Like, Mishkov isn't playing. How can the team be doing better without Mishkov? He's my Lord and Savior. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, you deal with these people on Twitter all the time. I don't. So, but yeah, good to see that my thought process there isn't so far-fetched. Looking at this season, who do you think had maybe the brightest season in terms of, I wasn't kind of expecting that, and who was I guess the biggest disappointment was Mishkov, but who was the second biggest disappointment?
Yeah, it's a good question about, who had the brightest season, because I want to jump to a young player, because that's what the future of this organization is ultimately going to be determined by. I guess you can make a case for Porter Martone, even though he didn't play the full year, because he came up and looked awesome from the jump, and the Flyers look like they have a real core piece in Martone. But honestly, I'm going to go with an older guy, and I'm going to say Dan Vladar, because Dan Vladar was a guy who, yeah, I wouldn't say they picked him up off the scrap heap. Like, it's not like they gave him a league minimum contract, but he wasn't a guy who everybody in the league was trying to sign on July 1. The Flyers identified.
I laughed about it, like, hand up. I was like, you gotta be, they're going with Dan Vladar.
Yeah. Like this was a guy who was the backup in Calgary, whose numbers in his career have been somewhere between bad and just okay, depending upon the year. But the Flyers identified a guy who has the size, has the athleticism, has the work ethic to be a legitimately good NHL goalie. And they worked with him. He worked on his own. He had a big summer, but they worked with him. Kim Dillaball did a great job. And, now I think you come out of the season. Look, I'm not saying Dan Vladar is a Vezina contender. Like, I'm not saying he's one of the best goalies in hockey, but he looks like a legitimate number one goalie. He looks like a guy who you could say, he's my starter, and he is a perfectly good NHL starting goalie. And that's something the Flyers did not have going into this year. They had a bunch of prospects. They had kids who you're like, maybe Zavragin, maybe Bjarnason. We spent draft picks on these guys maybe a few years down the road. But it could take goalies time to become legitimate NHL goalies. Like, you're looking at Sam Ersson. There was a time where Sam Ersson was a top prospect, and now he's not looking like he's going to be much. Had a better second half than first half, but still had some of the worst numbers in hockey. So I don't even know if the Flyers are going to keep him as their backup for next year. But with Vladar, you now have a guy who can be your number one for the foreseeable future, as you're waiting for your young guys to hopefully develop into what they're ultimately going to be.
Now, who do you give credit to on that front? Is it the player, or is it Kim Dillaball, the goalie coach? Because I feel like the goalie coach in Philly is never mentioned, because they never have good goaltending. Was this a situation where, like, he bought into what Dillaball was teaching, or I know ultimately the answer is a little bit of both, but what do you think it's more about?
Well, I mean, the answer is a little bit of both, but I'll go into kind of what I mean by that. The big thing that Vladar, from what I've heard, what he really worked on in the offseason, and this was even really before he was working with Dillaball, he really worked on his ability to track pucks through traffic. And he became one of the better goalies in the NHL this year doing that. And that's a testament to the hard work that he put in. This is a guy who identified a problem in his game and fixed it, and props to Dan Vladar. Now, there are other things he improved in his game, I'm sure, more technical elements that I just don't understand because I'm not a goalie. But that was an area of his game that he didn't used to be good at, and now he's good at, and props to Dan Vladar for putting in the time and figuring out that element of his game. Now, on the Dillaball side, obviously Dillaball is the goalie coach. He's the one doing the teaching. But it goes beyond that for Dillaball in this particular situation, because not only did he work with Vladar, not only did he find ways to make him a better goalie, he's, from my understanding, the biggest reason why the Flyers signed him. Because apparently Dillaball came to, and think about this, Kim Dillaball was on the hot seat going into the season. I remember he had Sam Harrison had developed. You had Kolosov, you had Fedotov. All the Flyers had the worst goaltending in hockey, the previous season. And Kim Dillaball was a holdover. They hired a new coach. He was the only assistant coach that did not get thrown out with the, with the bathwater when they moved on from John Tortorella. And I remember asking Danny Briere in the offseason, like, why did you keep Dillaball when you let go all the other assistants? And he was like, well, we felt like Dillaball deserved a shot. And that's not like a ringing endorsement. That is you better do well this season or else we're going to go out and get a new guy. Well, Kim Dillaball apparently went to Danny Briere in the offseason prior to July 1 and was like, get me Dan Vladar. I could turn him into something. And apparently what Dillaball knew, which was an interesting little tidbit of information, I did a feature on it at the start of the season before Vladar even really broke out. What Dillaball knew through the grapevine is that in Calgary, Vladar's numbers last season may not have looked that great, his final season in Calgary. But basically what was going on is that they were onboarding Dustin Wolf. He was a rookie goalie. He had a really good rookie year with Calgary. But what Calgary did is basically they gave Dustin Wolf all of the easy matchups, and they gave Dan Vladar all the hard ones. Dan Vladar was getting every second game of a back-to-back. He was getting every game against Vegas. He was getting every game against Edmonton. And then Dustin Wolf was getting every game against San Jose. He was getting almost all the home games. So basically what they were doing is they were using Dan Vladar as a heat shield for the rookie. And because of that, Vladar's numbers, like Vladar's breakthrough very well might have started last season. It's just none of us noticed it because he was taking on every single tough matchup for Calgary to make the young kids transition to the NHL look better. Dillaball heard about that. He heard about that through the grapevine. He was like, okay, yeah, he might have finished with a sub 900 save percentage, but actually when you account for the matchups, probably a lot better than that. And I think I can improve him because he's got the size and he's got the athleticism. And I've heard great things about his character. So props to Vladar for making the improvements to his game, but props for Dillaball for doing his research, identifying maybe a guy who was undervalued based upon things that only people in the know would know. And then going to Danny Briere, knowing that his job was on the line and saying, get me this guy, I can make something out of him. And he did.
Yeah. And credit to Briere for actually following through with it. Because now that signing looks like a steal. I do want to get back to Michkov for a second because this offseason, it is going to be talked about where you've got Austin Matthews in Toronto. Does he want out? Will they move on? And if Philly were to get Austin Matthews, you'd figure they'd have to give something up of high value. Michkov being a little bit in Rick Tockett's doghouse. I think I know the answer, but yeah, put a percentage of the odds that Michkov is back next season.
I think it's very high. I would say that the only way Michkov were to be traded is if it's for a legitimate star. Now, Austin Matthews would qualify as a legitimate star, but there's no guarantee, number one, that Austin Matthews is going to be traded. There's also no guarantee that Austin Matthews would even want to come to Philadelphia. He's got a no movement clause. I mean, Austin Matthews, if he decides I'm done with Toronto, and quite frankly, I would not blame him if he decides that. But like, there's no guarantee that he's going to be like, yeah, Philadelphia is where I want to go. He can be like, hey, I got a no movement clause and I'm only willing to waive it if you trade me to LA. Otherwise, I'll just play out the rest of my contract and then go sign with whoever I want to go sign with. So look, if Austin Matthews becomes available, I don't know if the Flyers would be willing to offer Michkov, but like, he's the level of player that they would at least think about. I don't see a world though where they just trade Michkov to trade him. It would have to be for a legitimate star level player, and legitimate star level players, while they get traded sometimes, doesn't happen that often. So I would think the smart money is on them keeping Mishkov because I know Danny Briere still believes in the kid. I know the Flyers still see a lot of value in him long term. They think he could become a star level player. They knew this is going to take time. They knew this was going to be a process, that he had a lot to learn. And I think they want to keep him. But hey, if a legitimate star level player at a position of need like center or defense becomes available, like you have to at least think about it. You'd be doing yourself a disservice and you'd be doing your fans and your organization a disservice if you don't at least strongly consider it. I'm just not necessarily expecting that to come up. And if that opportunity doesn't come up, I expect Matvei Mishkov to be on the team next season.
Speaking of Austin Matthews real quick and the Toronto Maple Leafs and the absolute shit show that their organization is, why don't you ever go after, Keith Jones and Danny Briere the way that Steve Simons went after I don't even know the guy's name, but the guy who hired John Chayka. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the guy who hired him, but like, why? Like it seems like compared to that guy, you're a little bit of a coward.
I guess I am. I guess I am. Now, what I will say is that Steve Simmons is basically the Howard Eskin of Toronto, and
okay, I didn't know, and that makes so much sense.
I don't really have any desire to be the new Howard Eskin of Philadelphia, but hey, you know what? It went viral, and he got a lot of eyeballs on his stuff because he asked that question. So he did his job. He did his job the way that he needs to do his job. So props to Steve Simmons on that one.
Yeah, if you're not aware, he asked the guy who hired John Chayka. I talked to 20 people in the last couple of days. One of them said nice things about this guy. Why'd you hire him? And then the guy from Toronto said, I guess I talked to different people. And then that wasn't good enough. And Simons, whatever his name is, just said, you realize the entire hockey world is laughing at you right now. It seemed like he took it as a personal attack, which was the best part. Yeah. But I mean, I know a lot of Toronto Maple Leafs fans felt that same way. So, all right, moving back on to the Flyers. I would say that their last offseason was a big success. You get Trevor Zegras in here. You stole him from Anaheim. He ends up having a really, really good season, buys in a Rick Tocchet system. We've talked about that before. This upcoming offseason, what are you expecting from Danny Briere?
Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting him to try to make things happen because the Flyers have a ton of cap space. Now they're going to have to re-sign some guys. They have to re-sign Zegras. They have to re-sign Drysdale. Like they have to make a decision on Sam Harrison. So they're going to have to make some decisions with that cap space. They're going to have to fill some of that up by bringing their guys back. But even when they do that, they're still going to have a lot of cap space. And the free agent market, to be charitable, is very thin, because everybody signed back their guys because everybody has a lot of cap space. So if the Flyers are going to be active, it's probably going to have to be in the trade market. Now, Danny Briere has shown over his time as general manager of the Flyers that he can get trades done. He got the Trevor Zegras trade done. He did a great job with the Provorov deal. Like, he's made good trades. He did a great job with the Scott Lawton deal, getting a first round pick that's now going to be an unprotected pick from a team that might be in free fall in the Leafs. So
a team that already moved on from Scott Lawton.
Yeah, exactly. They traded him at the deadline. So he's shown that he can pull off good trades. However, it's not easy to pull off good trades. Now, he's going to have to continue to make good moves if he wants to push this thing forward, because the free agent market is pretty barren this year because everybody re-signed their guys. But I expect Briere to make at least one or two, maybe not earth-shaking trades, but at least impactful trades this summer, because the Flyers have too many wingers. They just have too many wingers. Like, Alex Bump showed in this postseason that he's ready to be an NHL player. Maybe not ready to be a great NHL player, but at the very least ready to start developing at the NHL level and learning, from his mistakes against the best competition in the world. They don't have a spot for him if everyone is healthy. If everybody's healthy, like Alex Bump's in the AHL because he's not a fourth-line player, they want him to play. So somebody that plays wing, even if now you think Trevor Zegras is a center, and I think they probably are going to keep him a center, even if you think he's a center now, still got to move out one wing. So I think there is at least one trade coming to kind of clear up that logjam. I think they'll maybe move on from somebody on the back end, maybe two guys on the back end, just because they've got guys like Oliver Bonk coming, David Jiricek, who they traded Bobby Brink for at the deadline. They've got him coming. He's got to make the team next year because he's no longer waiver exempt. So if he doesn't make the team, you risk losing him for nothing. And I don't think they want to do that. So they got to clear some spots. And also, hey, they just made the playoffs. Like, Briere wants to strike while the iron's hot. The fan base is excited. The team thinks that they maybe not are a cup contender, but that maybe they could take another step next season. They want to improve this team. So I would expect him to be active. Now it just comes down to whether the moves he makes are good, and we shall see.
I know you got another interview coming up, so I won't keep you too much longer. But talking about the 3.9% chance to make the playoffs. They make the playoffs. They win that round one. We've seen teams before in all sports fall into the trap of like, okay, now we're ready to win when they're not actually ready to win. And looking at this upcoming draft being absolutely loaded, apparently, do you think this is a situation where the Flyers are willing to mortgage a little bit of the future in terms of some draft picks to make a move, because now they've moved up their timeline, whereas maybe entering this past season, they went, okay, we're probably 3 years away from truly contending. Now they think they're ready to contend next season.
I think they know they're not ready to contend next season. Like, unless you go out and you trade for Austin Matthews, then obviously that changes the timeline, because suddenly you have a legit 1C to go along with all your good young guys. But I don't think they're going to look at it as, well, let's go all in and become a contender next season. But do I think that they'd be willing to trade some draft picks? Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. I think that Toronto pick, that unprotected first, which is really valuable, that could be on the table for the right player. Even their first round pick this year, like, look, they'll make that pick. They got no issues with it, but it's going to be a pick in the early 20s. It's not a super valuable pick. I think they'd be willing to make to trade that pick away for for a legitimate player if the right deal presents itself. They made a lot of draft picks over these last 3 seasons. A lot of first round picks, a lot of second round picks. They brought a lot of young prospects into the organization. I think they know that at some point, like, you're not going to have enough room for all these guys. You can't keep making draft pick after draft pick after draft pick, because you're not going to have enough spaces in your lineup for all these guys. At some point, you need to turn some of this capital into actual NHL players now. So yeah, I think they'd be willing to make moves. I don't think they're going to sell the farm. Like, I'm not expecting them to trade like Porter Martone. I'm also really not expecting them to trade Mishkov. Like, if they do, it would have to be for a legitimate superstar, and those guys aren't available very often. But if you're talking about do I think they'd be willing to trade a first round pick, a second round pick? Yeah, I think they would, given the right deal. Sure.
All right, last one. I don't know if I brought this up the last time I interviewed you. I think I did, or I brought it up like just through text and stuff. I can't help but wonder how different this team would be if they had taken Cole Caulfield instead of Cam York, and then been able to convince Cutter Gauthier to sign. 2 moves from the previous organization by nice guy Chuck. When you look back at the Chuck Fletcher tenure, what was the worst move? Was it not convincing Cutter Gauthier to sign and pissing him off? Was it passing on Cole Caulfield to watch him go 1 pick later? Or was it trading for Rasmus Ristolainen and using the excuse, yeah, but other people were going to do it, so we had to?
It's funny. I was actually having a conversation with people last night about the Chuck Fletcher era, and I'm going to go with a completely different answer.
I love that.
I think the biggest mistake that Chuck Fletcher made in his entire tenure, because of the downstream effect of this mistake, was in the 2021 offseason, he should have fired Alain Vigneault. And I think Alain Vigneault is a good coach, but he was mentally checked out from that team after that, that shortened season in 2021 that started in January, ended in May. The entire team hated him. He didn't really want to coach anymore. And Chuck Fletcher was like, nah, he's my guy. And because of that, they pay a second round pick to get rid of Shane Gostisbehere, who's a really good defenseman now for Carolina. They sign Rasmus Ristolainen. They trade for Ryan Ellis. They remake the entire team because of what Alain Vigneault said he needed his team to be. And then Alain Vigneault shows up to camp in September and is still mentally checked out, and they have to fire him in December. And the team is one of the worst teams in the league that year. I think that was the pivot point of the entire Chuck Fletcher tenure, was picking Alain Vigneault over the players, and then 3 months later having to fire Alain Vigneault anyway because he didn't want to coach in the NHL anymore.
That's like signing Vincent Lecavalier for Peter Laviolette and 3 games in, saying, you know what, Petey, I think we're good.
Exactly.
I think we're good here.
Yeah.
All right, Charlie. He covers the team for PHLY, allphly.com. And then you have your Flyer show with Bill Matz. Do a great job there. I have nothing else. Do you have anything else?
No. Other than how you doing, buddy? How you doing?
I'm dead inside.